How did I become just the old lady who's paying for everything at my own daughter's wedding? Why did the guests smirk when they looked at my name tag? And why was my daughter, the girl I raised alone, sacrificed for, loved beyond measure, laughing with her new in-laws like I didn't even exist? It was meant to be the happiest day of her life. But for me, it was the day I disappeared. That's when I knew something had to change. But no one was ready for how far I'd go. My name is Evelyn Grant. I'm 58 years old, a retired nurse from Charleston, South Carolina. I spent over 3 decades in the chaos of emergency rooms, saving lives, calming fears, holding hands during the worst moments of people's lives. I saw pain. A staff member greeted me at the door with a smile. "Name tag for you, ma'am," she said, handing me a small card clipped to a ribbon. I took it without thinking. But when I looked down, my smile froze. It read, "The old lady who's paying for everything." At first, I thought there had been a mistake. A mix-up. Maybe someone else's tag had been slipped into my hands. But no, it was mine. No mother of the bride. No name. No respect. Just a cruel little label like I was the punchline of some inside joke. I looked around, hoping I was overthinking it. But then I saw the guests. A few stifled laughs. A couple of whispers. One of Chloe's new in-laws nudged another and pointed at me with a smirk. My face burned. Across the room, Chloe stood radiant in her gown, laughing with her husband's family. Her smile so bright until I walked up to her. I held up the tag and waited. She glanced at it once and rolled her eyes. "Oh, lighten up, Mom," she said, waving her hand like I was being silly. "It's just a joke." A joke? I had sold my grandmother's locket to help pay for the dress. I had dipped into the emergency fund for the down payment on the venue. I hadn't bought myself a new coat in 2 winters. And I was a joke? Before I could say anything, she turned her back to me, already laughing at something one of her in-laws said. I stood there frozen, the tag still dangling from my hand, the laughter behind me getting louder. I could feel every whisper, every sideways glance cutting into me like tiny blades. For the first time in 30 years, I felt like a stranger in my daughter's life. And something inside me began to crack. I didn't eat at the reception. Not one bite of the lobster rolls, or the wedding cake I paid for. I didn't dance, even when they played my favorite Motown songs. I didn't make a toast. Didn't pose for the family photos. I simply smiled through clenched teeth while something inside me quietly withered. People didn't notice. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. I sat in the back corner of the ballroom, watching Chloe dance with her new husband. She looked beautiful, radiant even. But she never looked my way. The next morning, I drove home alone. My dress wrinkled, heels still muddy from the garden path, a headache pounding behind my eyes. I dropped my purse at the door and collapsed onto the bed, too tired to even cry. And then came the photos. Chloe's wedding album flooded social media like a tidal wave. Post after post, carefully filtered and captioned, all smiles and sparkle. But it was the comments that cut deepest. Wow, her mom looks miserable. Is that her grandma or the wedding planner? Money can't buy youth, huh? Dozens of them. Each one like a tiny paper cut across my chest. They weren't talking about some stranger. They were talking about me. Evelyn Grant. The woman who raised Chloe. Who skipped lunches so she could have ballet lessons. Who stitched her prom dress by hand when we couldn't afford designer. Who held her through every heartbreak. And yet, here I was. Reduced to a joke. A background character in her happily ever after. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling fans spinning slow circles above me. I thought about everything I had done for her. The late-night ER shifts. The time I sold my mother's pearls to pay for her first semester of college. The car I co-signed for, even when I couldn't afford to fix my own. I had given her everything. But in doing so, I had taught her the wrong lesson. I taught her to expect love without effort. To value comfort over compassion. To prioritize appearances over appreciation. And in all that giving, I forgot to teach her gratitude. That realization was like a slap across my own face. And strangely, it didn't make me want to cry. It made me determined. I decided I wouldn't call her and cry into the phone. I wouldn't send her long texts about how she hurt me. And I certainly wouldn't beg for an apology that might never come. No, I was done being invisible. If Chloe saw me only as a checkbook with wrinkles, then I would show her what true value looked like. Not with bitterness. Not with revenge. But with clarity. And distance. I wouldn't give her more. I would give her less. Less money. Less support. Less unconditional acceptance of disrespect. She needed to learn. Not to punish her, but to wake her. So I started planning. Because love, real love, doesn't just give. Sometimes it teaches. Even when it hurts, the house was quiet, eerily so. No texts. No calls. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking of the wall clock that suddenly felt too loud. But I needed that silence. It gave me room to think clearly for the first time in years. I pulled out an old filing box from the hall closet. It was dusty, heavy, filled with papers I hadn't touched in ages, bank statements, trust documents, college forms, apartment contracts. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for until I found it. A crisp folder labeled, Charleston Apartment, Purchase Agreement. I opened it and stared at the name on the deed. Mine, not Chloe's. Not co-signed. Not jointly owned. I had bought the apartment years ago when she graduated from college. I told her it was in her name, but I never actually changed the ownership. I kept the deed under my name to protect her, at least that's what I told myself back then. In reality, I had been afraid she'd be taken advantage of by the wrong people. Looks like I wasn't wrong. She and her new husband had moved in there a few months before the wedding. Rent-free. Utilities paid. All with my blessing. All under the assumption of love and mutual respect. But now, it felt like I had handed them a throne while they crowned me the jester. I kept digging. Then I remembered the honeymoon. I had booked it as a gift, using my airline rewards account and hotel points I'd saved over 10 years. I pulled up the reservations on my laptop. And there it was, another quiet blessing in disguise. Fully cancelable. All of it. The flights. The resort in Santorini. The private boat tour. Every romantic detail, reversible. They thought I was too soft. Too old. Too forgettable. They thought I'd smile through anything, just grateful to be included, even as the punchline. They were wrong. But this wasn't going to be a tantrum. I wasn't going to scream or burn bridges. That's not who I am. This would be something else. A reset. I called my lawyer and scheduled an appointment. Sat across from him in my pressed slacks and pearls and rewrote my entire will. Chloe's share? Reassigned for now. My estate was moved into a protected account. Not out of spite. Out of self-respect. Then came the honeymoon. Click. Cancel. Click. Refund. Click. Reclaim. Lastly, the apartment. I didn't evict them outright. I gave proper notice, 60 days. Legal. Polite. Final. Then I sat at my desk, folded my hands, and began to write. Not a threat. Not an apology. A letter. I wrote to Chloe in my neatest handwriting. Pen on real paper. No screens. No emojis. Just my voice. Not angry. Not cruel. Just honest. I reminded her of who I was. Not just her mother, but a woman. A human being. Someone who had given her everything, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Someone who deserved dignity. Respect. A seat at the table. I told her this wasn't revenge. It was reflection. A wake-up call. A line in the sand. Because love isn't blind. And it isn't silent. And sometimes it says enough. The morning Chloe was supposed to fly to Bali, my phone rang just after 7 a.m. I was already up, sipping my coffee in the sunroom, watching birds flutter by the feeder. The phone vibrated across the glass table. Her name lit up the screen. I answered calmly. Hello. Mom, our flights aren't showing up in the app, she said, her voice tense, confused. Did something happen? I took a deep breath. Yes. I canceled them. There was silence. Heavy, stretched silence that said more than words ever could. Finally, she asked, why would you do that? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I did it because I didn't feel valued, I said. Because at your wedding, I wasn't seen as your mother, I was treated like a wallet. A running tab with gray hair. She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing. Shallow. Quick. You laughed with them, I added. When they made fun of me, you let them. You never stepped in. Still, no reply. She hung up. I sat there, strangely calm. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just settled. Like a weight had finally been put down. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was her husband. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Why are we getting notice to vacate the apartment? I kept my tone measured. Because the lease is under my name. Always has been. And I no longer wish to sponsor a couple who see my worth only in dollar signs. He scoffed. This is petty. You're punishing us for a joke. No, I said. I'm drawing a boundary. There's a difference. He hung up with a muttered curse. I didn't call back. Word traveled quickly. Cousins started texting. One aunt left me a long voicemail dripping with disapproval, talking about family unity and how I was being vindictive. But then something unexpected happened. My niece, Lily, called me. Aunt Evelyn, she whispered. I saw the name tag picture. I don't blame you. Honestly. I admire you. Then came another call. And another. Quiet messages of support. Women mostly. Women who had given too much. Said too little. Watched themselves be erased in the name of family harmony. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone. 2 days later, Chloe showed up at my doorstep. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. She looked more like the little girl I used to know than the bride in the pearl-studded veil. She held her arms stiff at her sides. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. But this time, she wasn't angry. She was uncertain. Wounded. Human. I don't understand what's happening, she said softly. I nodded. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in a while. She blinked, stunned. I led her inside. Offered her tea. She sat down at the kitchen table, where I used to braid her hair before school. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said, settling across from her. But for years, I made the mistake of giving without teaching. You're not a bad person, Chloe. But you've forgotten how to appreciate the people who love you. She looked down at her hands. Silent. I'm not angry anymore, I said. Just awake. It was the calmest I had ever felt. Not because I had taken anything away, but because, for the first time, I had taken something back, myself. We sat across from each other in the kitchen, the same one where I had made her pancakes shaped like hearts on Valentine's Day. The same place where I had bandaged her scraped knees, soothed her fevers, and braided her hair for school recitals. Now, we were two women. No longer just mother and daughter, but two adults with decades between them, and wounds between them too. Why are you doing this? Chloe whispered. Her voice trembled like it used to when she'd get caught sneaking cookies from the jar. I looked her in the eye, not harshly, but directly. I owed her that. And I owed it to myself. Because I love you, I said slowly. But love doesn't mean I let you humiliate me. She blinked. Her lower lip quivered slightly, but she didn't respond. Not right away. I reached across the table and handed her the letter I had written. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't full of accusations. It was quiet, measured, truthful. She unfolded it with shaking fingers and began to read. I watched her eyes move across the page, saw the way her face softened, then tightened, then finally began to crumble. The letter talked about dignity, about respect, about how it's never too late to correct the way we treat the people who've given us everything. I reminded her that I wasn't just mom, the one who magically fixed everything behind the scenes. I was Evelyn, a woman who had built a life, who had made sacrifices, who had dreams, limits, pain. It wasn't about canceled flights or apartment leases. It was about being seen, being heard, being human. When she finished reading, she didn't say anything. Not right away. She just sat there, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. One after another. Not because she lost the honeymoon. Not because of the apartment. Not because of embarrassment. She cried because, for the first time, she saw me. Really saw me. Not as the old lady paying for everything. Not as some background figure in her highlight reel. But as her mother. As a woman. A person with boundaries. With pride. with strength. She looked up at me through glassy eyes. I didn't mean to make you feel like that, she said. I got caught up with the wedding, with everyone around me. I didn't think. I nodded. That's the problem, Chloe. You didn't think. You didn't look. And you didn't listen. She swallowed hard. I thought I was just joking. I gave a sad smile. Sometimes jokes are built on truths we're too afraid to say out loud. There was a long pause. Then she reached across the table, hesitated, and finally took my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. It didn't erase the pain, but it acknowledged it. And sometimes, that's the beginning. I squeezed her fingers gently. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for partnership, for mutual respect. That's what love between adults looks like. She nodded, wiping her tears. In that moment, something shifted between us. The air changed. We weren't the same people we had been just days ago. She saw my strength not just in sacrifice, but in self-respect. And for the first time, I saw her not as a child to protect, but as a woman who still had something to learn and the heart to finally do it. A few weeks passed. The world didn't fall apart. The sky didn't crack open. Life just moved forward. Chloe and her husband quietly moved out of the apartment. They found a smaller place in a modest neighborhood, not what they were used to, maybe, but there's something they paid for with their own money. Something they could call their own, truly. They also rebooked their honeymoon. Not Bali. Not luxury. But a quiet cabin in the mountains. She didn't ask me to pay. She didn't even mention it. And for once, that silence felt like respect. Then one afternoon, just before sunset, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Chloe standing there, holding a small white box tied with a ribbon. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She looked peaceful. I brought you something, she said softly. We sat at the kitchen table, our table, and I untied the ribbon slowly, carefully. Inside the box was a small silver photo frame. Inside the frame, centered and shining, was a name tag. But not the one from the wedding. This one was engraved in elegant script. It read, Mother of the bride, my hero. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She looked at me and smiled. It's not much, but I wanted you to know. I see you now. My eyes filled, but I didn't let the tears fall. I just smiled back. The kind of smile that comes not from happiness alone, but from deep earned peace. Things weren't perfect between us. We still had room to grow. But they were real now. Honest. No more pretending. No more quiet resentments swept under designer rugs. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing in my own home and in my own skin. I hadn't just canceled a honeymoon or served a notice. I had reclaimed something far more valuable than money or approval. I had reclaimed my voice, my place, my self-respect. That invisible weight I'd carried for so long, the pressure to always say yes, to always give, to never ask for more, I had finally set it down. And in that space, something better bloomed. Balance. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a parade. Just that one silver name tag. That one simple moment where my daughter finally saw me, not as her bank, not as her backup plan, not as the old lady in the corner, but as her mother, as her mentor, as her hero. And I realized something else. Sometimes you have to disappear for people to notice you were ever there at all. You have to take a step back, reclaim your boundaries, and let the silence speak louder than words ever could. Because when they finally see you again, clearly, fully, truthfully, it makes every quiet battle worth it. Every lonely night. Every unacknowledged sacrifice. Every tear you didn't let fall. They all lead to this. Recognition. Respect. Rebirth. So I placed the new name tag on my mantle. Not out of pride, but as a reminder. I didn't just raise a daughter. I rediscovered myself. And that was the best gift of all. If you've ever felt invisible to the people you gave everything to, remember this. You have the right to be respected, to be seen, and to stand tall even when it shakes the ground beneath you. Share this story with someone who needs the courage to reclaim their voice. Because love should never mean losing yourself.